So with OnePlus sort of shifting into the more premium pricing segment of the smartphone market, that leaves some room for other companies to step up into the budget-friendly flagship space, and Asus looks like they're up for the challenge. This is their latest flagship, the Zenfone 6, and for starters, it's going to cost $499 in the US, which is kinda insane for everything that you're getting. You're still getting the latest Snapdragon 855 processor, and the $500 base model will snag you 6GB of RAM and 64 gigs of storage. There's a couple of other configurations with 8 gigs of RAM and more storage, but at the time of this video, Asus hasn't confirmed the pricing on those models just yet, but you can probably assume it'll be at least $50 to $100 more. One of the most unique aspects of the Zenfone 6 is the fact that it doesn't have a front-facing camera, and that's because it actually uses the rear cameras for everything. The rear cameras can flip out and face towards you via a motorized mechanism. This is kind of similar to the Galaxy A80 that we saw from Samsung fairly recently, but instead of rising and then flipping, this just flips straight out, and I gotta admit, it's pretty freaking cool. The biggest benefit to this is you're getting the same quality across the board, whether you're taking a picture of a landscape or an ordinary selfie. Asus didn't skimp on the camera sensors either. The main sensor is the 48 megapixel Sony IMX, which is one of the best camera sensors on the market right now that a lot of phones are starting to use, and it's paired with a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle sensor. The wide angle lens is going to afford you a lot of flexibility, like being able to take a group selfie without having to stretch your arms out or use a selfie stick, God forbid. And it'll also be really great for vlogging purposes. You can flip the cameras out just by tapping the camera rotation button in the camera app, which probably seems pretty obvious, but one really cool thing that Asus lets you do is if you tap and hold on the camera rotation button, you can drag up or down to angle the cameras however you want. I'm not entirely sure what the practical benefits of this are in real world use, but it's still pretty cool that Asus lets you do it. Having this flip out mechanism also changes the way that you would take a panorama. Normally you would have to turn the camera yourself, but the Zenfone 6 will automatically rotate the camera for you, and this means you can even capture yourself in the panorama or take a vertical panorama if you really wanted to. Also, if you happen to drop the Zenfone 6, there's a gravitational sensor inside that will cause the cameras to automatically close up to prevent the mechanism from getting damaged. The flip out mechanism does end up making the Zenfone 6 a little bit thicker than some other flagships, but Asus makes really good use of that extra space by packing a massive 5,000 mAh battery inside, which hopefully will translate into really good battery life. Since the Zenfone 6 doesn't have a front-facing camera and the fingerprint sensor is on the back, this allows the entire front of the phone to have an uninterrupted display with thin bezels without resorting to a notch or hole punch. It is an IPS display and not AMOLED, but to my eyes it looks pretty good so far, and it's all protected in Gorilla Glass 6. Now, something that Asus has improved drastically on the Zenfone 6 from previous Zenphones is the software. They've pretty much done away with the Zen UI, which always felt really clunky and bloaty, and have gone with a more stock-like Android experience. They're pretty much taking the OnePlus approach here, where the software looks and feels like stock, but it still has extra features baked in, but those features are implemented much more seamlessly. There's still some Zen UI stuff that remains intact, like the Zen motion gestures, but for the sake of simplicity, they're now just called gestures. It will be running Android Pie at launch, but Asus has gone ahead and included a dark mode, so you don't have to wait for Android Q. The Zenfone 6 is slated to receive an update to Android Q and will also be supported by the Android Q beta program if you want to try it out a little early. So since this phone costs $500, you're probably thinking there's some sort of a catch, and there is. It doesn't have an IP rating or wireless charging, even though it's got a glass back, but if you want those things, you're going to have to look at phones that cost several $100s more. The Zenfone 6 does, however, have a headphone jack, and it also has an extra hardware key called the Smart Key. It defaults to Google Assistant, but you can remap it to a handful of other functions like the flashlight or camera. Anyways, that's pretty much going to do it for this hands-on of the Zenfone 6. Do you think this phone is a good value for $500? Let us know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.